Hey there everyone, and welcome to more RPG horror stories with D&D Doge. In today's episode, we have a tale about a dungeon master that has a DM versus players mentality, and makes things up on the fly to screw over the players. A story about a self-centered brat that thinks the game should revolve around him. And then, as is the tradition on Fridays, we cap off the week with a D&D glory story. Now, before we delve into the stories, here's a kitty to up our ACs against the cringe that these stories are sure to induce. There we go. Now I think we are ready for these stories, so let's hop right in. DM versus players, and making up some horrendous calls. By Reddit user Limbionics. When I started playing D&D, I played with a group whom I have never met, having been invited by a friend, who turned out to be a horror story all on his own. But that's for another time. But this is about this particular player at the table. We are at our friend's place, and out of the rain walks in three people I have never met. A guy and his girlfriend, and this dude who immediately lays out a laptop, a bunch of books, a binder, and all of his dice. The DM, I assumed. But he turns and points the finger at this guy who came in with his girlfriend and says, "Alright, effer, you're going down. Do your worst." It turns out that he's just an overprepared player. As a player, he was completely contentious, ignoring the fact that half of us were new and didn't know what we were doing. Instead, he tried to turn it into him versus his best friend Dungeon Master. When we were faced with a rival party clearly looking for a reason to start a fight, he headbutts their leader and says, "What? That's what I do. It's a greeting in my culture." The entire game turned into us trying to stay out of trouble while this player keeps trying to start fights. From this player, I learned that the term murder hobo exists, and I think of him as an example every time I have to explain what that means. Then came the day when this player decided to dungeon master instead. We were asked to clear a bunch of kobolds out of the cave who had been raiding the locals in the village. We fight the kobolds, and when it was clear that we were winning, he let slip that there's kobold babies hiding behind them to make us feel bad. When it was clear that we were about to win, he literally has a baby kobold holding a fireball scroll suicide bomb us. We were level 3. Another time, I, as the party rogue, am positioning myself for a surprise attack at a camp of bandits. There's a few tents, so I tell him that I want to sneak towards the tent and stay stealthed on the outside. Whomever comes out first, I'll sneak attack. He asked me for a stealth check, and I rolled a natural 20, which put me somewhere around like the high 20s with my proficiency bonuses. Then he rolls no dice and announces the result. "Someone lifts the edge of the tent from inside and stabs you." He names a number of damage that he doesn't roll, doesn't make any attack rolls, and is more than likely to drop me. The other players, including his friend who DM'd for us, all call BS immediately, to the point where he just reverted his call. I felt pretty vindicated, especially when one of the players pointed out that he just made some random bandit do to me what I had planned to do the whole time. And it makes no sense that I'd get hit instead on such a highly successful roll when he didn't roll for the bandit at all. This was probably the last call that he made for us. After that, we were never invited back to play with him running the game again. Apparently, our other dungeon master told us the reason was that we were too into roleplay, and that he just isn't interested in that kind of game, as he runs what's supposed to be highly engaging tactical combat. Well, if he runs high tactical combat, you would think that a rogue with a high roll and sneak, waiting outside a bandit tent to sneak attack, would be pretty tactical. But the DM just says that he's attacked instead. That isn't tactical, that's just BS. Also, to say that the kobolds had baby ones after the fact that OP's party was kicking some butt, and then have one self-delete with a fireball scroll, just sounds like a petty DM making crap up on the fly. This dude definitely had the DM versus party mentality, especially if his comment to the previous Dungeon Master was any indication. So I would not be too saddened about not being invited back to that game. It just saves you the headache of telling him that you won't come back. Let's move on. Absolute Brat rage quits D&D because we decided to keep playing. By Reddit user, really enjoys carbs. I'm still annoyed about this, and it was brought up to me again tonight, so I figured I should vent a bit here before I have to deal with this player again in a week. We're playing Waterdeep, but crap's gone off the rails, so the Game Master had to be a bit creative. The cast is Friendly GM, Halfling Paladin of the Laughing God that thinks that they're a child that has yet to grow up, and generally Robin Hoods around the city with a gang of orphaned children, played by me, aka Pally. Tiefling Warlock that is questionably evil, wealthy, educated, and likes to manipulate the jolly low intelligence and wisdom Pally with interesting results. From here on, known as Warlock. Shifter Glamour Bard that is generally a good time, known from this point on as Bard. Changeling Monk with multiple personalities based on their chosen form, generally never goes to their weakling elf-looking main form, and freaks when they do, known as Brat from here on out. We were down 2 players, so I won't mention those characters. Normally, the party is a bit bigger than us few. Slight spoilers for Waterdeep below. So, we just fought the Poverty Beholder, and nobody was looking too great. Brat got caught in Pally's Moonbeam, so they were forced into their OG form. They proceeded to freak out and cower, trying to hide from everyone while generally being on very low HP. This is in character and understandable, so Pally tries to give them a quick high five to heal them up, since we're in what is essentially a dungeon. They run away and cower some more, eventually causing Pally to tackle them to get a heal off. Probably not ideal, sure, but at least the guy wasn't in the danger zone anymore. Brat proceeds to get hysterical, and then compare it to assault and rape. Well, alright, if you say so. Wow, now that is one hell of a reach. Granted, they were probably just being hyperbolic, but seeing a character who mentally acts like a child rape them over a high 5 heal is a bit much in my book. Regardless, the session ended there, and it was left at that after a few calls of "calm down, you're overreacting." The following session rolls around, and we start off in the same spot. Brat continues to cower behind things, and generally refuses to interact with the party. Given that there's only so much one can do to engage with a character that is actively avoiding the party, we continue to play and attempt to open some of the chests that Brat was hiding behind, while Brat continued their hiding, sobbing tap dance. We figure, after some crap rolls, that we need a knock spell to get these bad boys open. So Greedy Pally and the gang go about talking to NPCs in the tower and learn that some of the apprentices know the spell. Great. So we make for the area deeper in the tower, get assaulted by animated staves, convince some NPCs to fight said staves as we slip off to continue our search for the knockcasters, and Brat continues to sulk, now alone in said tower room with dead Poverty Beholder. Well, alright dude, you do you I guess, was the general consensus. So we find a gargoyle and have a really fun conversation with them, getting them to join the party since we're basically down 3 party members, with Brat sulking and refusing to do much of anything. Gargoyle is well received and proves to be extremely useful in the next combat encounter. Meanwhile, Game Master is trying to bait Brat out by giving them info or little mentions of NPC activity. They snub 1 or 2 from what I remember, but eventually, finally stealth after some NPCs and find the party. We're in the middle of combat by now, and really not doing great, but thankfully, Gargoyle Friend is kicking ass. We're thrilled with them and shower praise, though apparently this was a big mistake, as it enrages Brat and he begins to make comments about us replacing him. Well, we hadn't. We just, found an NPC, but whatever. So he sits and pouts and watches us burning up spell slots and taking damage from this massive demon thing. We finally managed to down it, but we're not doing so hot. Gargoyle nearly went down, and we heal him a bit, but they're still not great. We shamble off and get to the animated armor enemy. Now, we've had nothing more than a short rest at this point, and we're pretty much all out of heals. Brat is still lurking in the shadows, but our passive perceptions are crap, so we don't notice him. He follows until we enter combat with the armor, and are getting our butts kicked, and then decides that it's his time to shine. While Pally is locked in a fight for their life, and losing, Brat changes into a male NPC that the party was very friendly with, and pops up from nowhere, landing a series of blows on the gargoyle and downing it in basically one turn. As soon as he did, we all yelled in protest and cautioned him that what he was doing would be met with retaliation, but he claimed that he was salty and that we'd replaced him, so he was going to kill it, even though he knew we liked the NPC, and even though we were literally in the midst of combat on low HP with no spell slots to spare. They then teleport behind Bard, attack them, then retcon attacking them, thus ending their hellish turn. So, Bard pops their Mantle of Inspiration so we can all flee and cower about the gargoyle, while Warlock spares the dying on them. We're all visibly angry, and the party decides that they're going to attack and likely kill Brat. Brat, meanwhile, downs the animated armor while we try to save Gargoyle, and then promptly sits in the middle of the room. They drop NPC's form and take on a form with a more stupid personality in the hope that we'd overlook their transgressions. They continue to repeat that they were salty and had been replaced as their only excuses, and then later try to suggest that their character was stupid, so it was in character. So, Warlock throws an Eldritch Blast, and the Bard ups the gargoyle, while Brat is prone in the middle of the room. I threaten them with my longsword, but eventually decide to just tie the clown up, because man, I'm not gonna kill the dude just for being an ass. We've all been playing for nearly a year, and the campaign is just about over, so I tie him up after winning the grapple check, and when he starts shouting, I gag his character, which was rude, I admit, but I was pretty angry myself. I'll just mention here that Brat and I don't get along, so the fact that it was me tying him up didn't go over well at all. Sure, I mean, the other two were in agreement to kill him, but F me, right? So he goes on to say that he doesn't need to put up with this BS, and enough people don't care about him IRL, so F you guys. Or something to that extent, and then rage quits much to our surprise. He GMs every other week, so he's dismantling this campaign now, and essentially, we've got one more game of Waterdeep, then it's rest in peace to D&D with this group. The kicker is that apparently he's effing livid with me, just me, so I can't wait for our final session. I'm half tempted to not even effing go, because it's just not fun anymore. If this were a new player, I'd be more understanding, but the man is in his mid-20s and has been playing for ages. We're likely not going to get an apology, and I wouldn't be surprised if one is demanded from us for not dropping everything and trying to force his character to interact with us, despite the previous rate comments. I'm all for role-playing and character development, but there's only so much one can do to engage with someone who refuses to engage back, yet expects it. I'm just still so baffled by all this, and I'm even considering if somehow I am in the wrong, even though everyone else was clearly pissed and out for blood. I just hope that I don't have a follow-up to post after this. That player sounded like they were a handful. It's one thing to play a character and stay in character, but if you have it that your character actively doesn't want to go with the party, then you have no right to be upset if they continue on without you. It's extremely selfish as a player to demand that all the other players halt game progression for a long time, just to try to convince your character to follow them over and over. And the whole thing about a character trying to heal Brat and then have Brat claim that it's equal to SA is right out of Delusion City. Hell, near the end, OP even stated that they were the one to basically save Brat's character, as the others wanted to actively kill them after they turned on the party, and Brat only gets mad at OP? It's no surprise that OP wouldn't even want to come back to this game, as I can only imagine the drama that would ensue. Though it looks like OP can only imagine it as well, as they later posted in the comments that the group disbanded after that session. Though, from what I read, that is probably for the best, though it does suck that they were near the end of the campaign and didn't get to finish it. Hopefully, OP has since found another table to play at, and this time, one that doesn't have a self-centered player. But now I think it's time that we cap off this video with this week's glory story. Tenser's Emotional Damage by Reddit user Iothil. Our party discovered a Diabolus taking over a large town, eventually using their devil summoning powers to dispatch anyone resisting their attempts at the takeover, including the players who discovered the plot. That led directly to us being ambushed with a split party. Barbarian and Wizard stayed back, while the rogue and dex-based fighter snuck around trying to find a way into their stronghold. The enemy composition was 4 Maragons and 1 Hush Devil. Needless to say, the Hush Devil got the jump on us, using their stolen voice to pretend that they are an attacked civilian. The Wizard got their voice stolen, so no more spellcasting, since no verbal component. The DM felt really smug about that, as the fight would not go well, since the rogue and fighter were hundreds of meters away, and 4 Maragon equals 8 attacks per turn, plus the 3 from the Hush Devil, all against a Wizard with 16 AC and a Barbarian with 17 AC. The Wizard, however, had the Meta Magic option, Subtle Spell, since they took Meta Magic Adept as a feat at level 1 for their human feat. So when it was the Wizard's turn, they used the Subtle Spell to cast Tenser's Transformation, grinning like a madman. So with plus 50 temporary hit points, 2 attacks, each of which will deal an added 2d12 force damage, plus proficiency in all weapons, strength and con saves, as well as advantage on all attacks. The Wizard grabs the Barbarian's magic hammer and starts mentally scarring 5 devils, very much to their surprise. The fight ends, the Wizard gets their voice back, and complains about the devils just reincarnating back in hell. Though the Barbarian starts laughing. The Wizard asks why, and the Barbarian chuckles and says, "You're telling me that they come back after that? Seriously? They might be immortal, but the emotional scars of being beaten up by an old man in a nightgown will never disappear. Somebody's getting demoted over this." Well, this just shows that if you're primarily a caster that uses vocal components, that it is always a good idea to have some backup that doesn't require your voice. I like the idea of those devils respawning, holding their knees and rocking back and forth, wondering what the hell just happened. It looks like the Doomslayer isn't the only thing that demons need to fear, because sometimes an old wizard with a magic hammer can also rip and tear. But that is all the time we have for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and now I have the urge to go play some Brutal Doom. Until next time.